Hi everybody, welcome to Speedway Motors. My name's Tim. I'm one of the techs here. I'm always glad you can join me. I always love talking about what I'm passionate about, and that is old Ford parts, even more so vintage speed parts. I've talked a lot recently about drum brakes on the front of a period correct hot rod. I've talked about the old Ford juice brakes, talked about Lincoln self-energizing brakes, and also F100 brakes. I had to bring this thing full circle and talk about another brake you might see on the front of an old hot rod if you're lucky, and that's the Kinmont brake. I feel so fortunate to work here at Speedway Motors. When I first got hired, I walked by Bill's office, and sitting right next to Bill's desk was a set of Kinmont brakes. First time I'd ever laid eyes on a set, and they're super hard to find, but I fell in love with the look of them right away. I just love this big aluminum scooped hat that goes on the front of these things. We'll talk about more as far as the specifics of how these things work in just a second. It's hard to get your hands on a set of Kinmonts. They're really rare. They only made 325 full sets of 4 of these things, so tracking them down is really tricky. When I decided I wanted to do a video on Kinmont brakes, the first problem was, where am I going to find some of these things? Well, luckily for me, I work right next to the Museum of American Speed. I made a call over to the curator over there. He said, "Tim, we've got you covered, man. Come on over." And they had me set up with this Kinmont right away. And they said, "Tim, do you want me to bring it over in the truck over to your office?" And I said, "No, I'm going to carry this thing," as if I was at a swap meet, you know, carrying this thing, so proud of it. You know, I would love a set of these. If any of you guys find these at an estate sale, remember your buddy Tim. I've got these on my Christmas list. Joking around, obviously when they made so few of them, they usually fetch about 5 figures for a set of 2, so they're extremely rare. Basically, the neat thing about these is the history behind them. Kinmont was actually the company that took an idea by a guy by the name of Joseph Milan to market. Basically, they bought the rights to mass produce these things. Joseph Milan designed this thing. They always called it the Milan brake before they called it the Kinmont brake. There's some history involving the Indy 500 with some early Joseph Milan brakes, where I think 1940 they had an Indy car running these things. That was probably the earliest example. They work really well. Basically what it is, it's a disc sandwiched in between the backing plate, which is this heavy cast iron. I kind of arranged this how it would be on a car with the wheel cylinder on the top. But basically you have the backing plate, which is a heavy cast iron, and then you've got what looks like a clutch pressure plate that presses this thing together, and it sandwiches this rotating toothed disc in between the two. Uses a wheel cylinder right at the top with a little rocker arm, which is kind of neat, and that's enough to take this thing and press it down on that disc. Guys that run these on their hot rods say they work really well. They don't have a lot of brake fade. They don't need a ton of adjustment once you get them adjusted. They have the 2 adjustment screws that allow you to turn them down, you know, as you drive the car and wear the lining off of this disc, which is coated on both sides. Actually, Rebestus back in the day produced these and made the linings for them. So really neat setup. Preston Tucker saw these brakes and was originally going to put these on his Tucker Torpedo automobiles. Another guy by the name of Gary Davis around the same time wanted to use this for his 3-wheeled Davis car. So those guys were doing their homework. They knew this was kind of the cat's meow when it came to brakes. What ended up happening, however, we all know the history with Preston Tucker. He went out of business, and so did Gary Davis. His car deal never really worked out. So Kinmont was stuck with a bunch of these things. Then the hot rodders found out about them, and in California where these things were produced, it didn't take long for word to spread and guys to get their hands on these things. They look great on an open wheel hot rod. You know, guys would chrome plate these backing plates and paint the insides and polish them off, and oh man, they just look gorgeous. Total eye candy. You know, so these things started getting out to hot rodders. Problem is, you know, they kind of faded away as different technology became available. So at the very end of their lives, you know, these things were selling, you know, what started out as $125 for a set of 4. You know, you could eventually get these in some of the catalogs for $52 for a set of 4 brakes. I couldn't even imagine that today. You'll be looking for these. I know I'm always got my eyes out for a set. They're a really neat brake. To kind of get back to the technical side of how these things work, you see the toothed ring. It's kind of like a disc brake. That thing spins in between these 2 sandwiched pieces of cast iron, and then what is actually the hat is this aluminum piece, and it has matching teeth on the inside. So basically, the hat kind of slides down over that rotating disc. I'll just kind of snap it on there. Yeah, perfect fit. And you can kind of see, this is the perspective you normally get when you find these on a hot rod, because of course they've got wheels on it, so you always see the back side, but boy is the front side ever cool. You know, you've got all these fins and cooling vents. Just a really neat design. This one's actually set up for the rear of a car, for a rear end, but they were exactly identical front and rear as far as the backing plates were concerned. They just had the hole drilled out for the emergency brake cable. So just a little bit of a history lesson. I am not the go-to guy on Kinmont Brakes. There are some people that know a lot more about them, obviously, than I do. I'm just more or less an admirer. If you check out Rodder's Journal number 7, there's a great write-up on Kinmont Brakes if you want to learn more. Also, the internet's a great source. There's some good write-ups out there. Not a ton of stuff, I mean, just because they're so rare and not many people have them. But be looking for them at your local swap meet, and if you can't use them, give me a call. But at any rate, always glad you can join me here at Speedway Motors. We're here to help you with any of your braking needs. You know, we've got a lot of different brake setups for your car too that are well within budget, trust me. But we're always glad to help you out. And again, thanks for visiting us here at Speedway Motors, and have a great rest of your day.